Hi everyone, I'm Maxime. I run product and solution engineers at Algolia.
Awesome, great.
Yeah.
And we introduced you before. One of the things that I'd love to know is how large are your companies, and how many solution engineers, or you call them systems engineers, we call them solution architects, so I may make that mistake. Like, how many technical people are in the company? Like, what percentage?
Do you want to? So we call them solution engineers,
Okay.
and we just had 100 people actually. So we have 100 people, about 20 to 22 salespeople, and I run a team of 14 solution engineers right now.
Okay, so half solution engineers. Okay.
Let's say
Jeff?
we have about 200 people at our company, but we are very engineering heavy, probably near 50%.
Okay.
But we only have 3 solution engineers. So
Oh,
I
interesting.
take almost the whole U.S. We have someone in the U.K. area, and then someone who does our on-premises.
Okay, great. Patrick?
Sure. So we're around, I think, 50 right now. Very engineering heavy. I would say more than half the company is engineering. Our solutions engineering team is a bit ad hoc. We pull from my team of solutions architects to support those deals, as well as frontline engineers, depending on the nature of the deal. So because we're an API company, much of our platform is consumable self-serve. We really have very strong documentation and a strong user community. But for our more strategic deals, we deploy those resources against those from my team, from senior engineers across the company.
So that's really interesting, because what I heard from all three of you, or for the 3 different companies, was, about ownership and owning part of the sales cycle. And so what makes sense to me is that you would have much more of a customer success orientation and bent if what you're having is helping people buy. But with Jeff, what I heard from you was that your solution engineers were really part of the sales cycle. And how do they delineate sales from systems engineers? Because your systems engineers do a lot of the same things that our sales folks do in terms of technical sales.
Possibly. I mean, we fully own all technical and functional buy-in.
Okay.
When the sales rep starts a discussion, at least our sales engineers want to be part of it immediately. I want to hear everything. I want to hear what their faults, their problems are, their challenges are. And so we become a pure owner from that level. So the sales rep will let us run the show for quite a while as we gather what the problems are, then come up with the business cases are, and what the solutions are.
Right.
Then we tell them what the product solution is, what the value is, what the challenges are, so they can take it back to the business side.
Interesting. How about Maxime? What about you?
The solution engineers come in as the technical expert, as you said, but really part of the squad from day one. So they're involved very early on, from even the first call or before the first call, to all the way to the deal closed, and even the onboarding, the configuration, the go live, and also the implementation flow. So the way we like to look at it is, we're still 2 separate teams as far as one of us owns a quota and one of us doesn't. It's
Right.
very important that, to me at least, solution engineers don't own quota, they own a general number. But we work together as a squad on the entire flow of the deal. So we are involved as experts. We're not a resource, which I thought was a really good point, but we don't cross that line of, doing what a quota carrying person would do.
That's interesting, because, good reps will use SEs in the proper way, and lazy reps will basically let an SE do as much as they possibly can to carry the quota for them, even though they're not getting paid on it. So how do you manage sort of the ownership piece between the technical organizations? I'd ask Patrick, like, you have 4 technical people that manage a customer relationship. Like, how do you not butt heads and run into issues?
It's a good question. We think about, there's a sort of, especially in the customer success world, the question of who owns the customer. So I'm coming at it from that perspective. There's philosophy around, when does someone become a customer? Is it when they put their credit card in, or when they sign a contract, or it devolves quickly into like a philosophical discussion. And on one hand, you can sort of discuss which team owns the customer. Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it comms? Is it brand? We think about, and this might sound a little, hippy dippy, but for us, the culture owns the customer, and so there's alignment across the organization around. I think for us, organizationally, culturally, that there's not a lot of butting heads.
That's great.
But because we're sort of in service of this high empathy approach towards delivering on the experience, and so we've really had a pretty good success with sort of low fences between orgs, and having a lot of alignment from the sort of empathetic customer first perspective
Yeah.
across
And-
the organization.
And Maxime, you're shaking your head, so.
Well, so before joining Algolia, I worked at Zendesk for 6 years.
Awesome.
And we had similar
I love them.
experience.
Yeah.
A great company.
Yeah.
And for about 18 months, I ran a solution engineering team out of London. And one of the things that happened is every time that situation happened, which happens in every single company, right?
Yep.
The lazy rep who's going to misuse an SE and sees in the SE a great way to make his quota without being actually good at his job. What would happen is we would all be very tight and close to each other, so we would all talk about this, and we immediately identified who that person was, or those people were.
And then you stop working with them? No.
and basically doubled on training for that person. So instead of reprimanding or working away, we did the opposite and worked
Oh, that's
doubly with them,
interesting.
doubled the shifts on having 2 SEs work with that person, and did everything we could to kind of turn the
Yeah.
tide. And that worked out really well. Not with everyone, obviously, it's down to the person at some point. But it worked out really well in a couple of cases
Got
where
it.
those people started feeling a lot more empowered and started realizing exactly how to use SEs.
So one of the questions that I have is, everyone has a technical sale. I've gotten more technical as I've been at Qubel, right? We sell big data as a service, and it is a middleware, and we start with what we call below the line people, which have projects, and then we want to get to above the line people who actually can sponsor those projects. So my question, I guess, for Jeff is, where's the crossover? Do you have crossover in your sales process where your sales guys get more technical and your technical guys become more salesy? Because I was looking at your slides and you're following a sales process. It's awesome.
There's always an overlap, but I think it's very important for the sales rep to understand that there's certain areas that customers just don't trust them, right? So if a sales rep says something, even if it's right,
Yeah.
their trust level is less than if I say it.
Got it.
And it's the same thing when it comes to customer success afterwards, if they're helping out, or if you have professional services, if you have product management. There's a lot of overlap of a lot of people. The whole company should own the relationship, but there are certain times when certain people are going to be believed more. And so it's really for the sales rep and I think the sales engineer to work together to orchestrate who should say what to the customer.
So on that point, Patrick, have you orchestrated, like you're actually going into a sales call and that the sales guys wants to get this over the line and they actually script you to help do that?
Yeah,
You've done that?
So for us, we're I like everything I'm hearing here. Keen has always been a very developer-centric company, and so we sort of treat that relationship as a very sacred interaction. That our technical people, our engineers, they take the lead on a lot of these conversations. And really, my perspective on this, especially from a customer success perspective, is as my CSMs, I want them thinking about relationship and account strategy and who to meet and how to navigate that and how to work those traps, and allow our solutions architects to speak the truth about the situation and feel unencumbered because they're not tied to quota and things like that. They're there to deliver value.
So on that point of speaking the truth, like that's a dangerous word, right? I mean, we're out there to actually get our customers to buy our products and tell them how our product fits their environment, and we're fighting other people who are speaking their truth. So how do you manage to that, Maxime? How do you go in and say, okay, a lot of the essays that we have, these guys are awesome, they're gold, right? And they're truth tellers, and they know the product really well, and they bond with the customers. So, how do you manage that salesy process that everybody hates with the idea of getting people to go through a buying process?
So great segue with the previous question, because my previous boss used to say that once you start speaking about price,
Right.
you lose half your credibility immediately. No offense to salespeople, but
Ouch.
there's a thing that happens when you start talking to someone about buying something from you,
Yeah.
where you just lose the certain part of your credibility. It's just automatic, and it happens to all of us when we haggle in the market or things like that. It's just a thing, more of a perception thing. So. Immediately the SC becomes really interesting in that conversation because he can speak the truth. He can say, I don't care about pricing. You can deal with pricing with Bob, right? That can happen. It's not necessarily healthy, but sometimes it's good to hear. Sometimes it's good for a technical buyer or an engineer who's at the table to help you scope a solution to hear that person doesn't really care about what the number is going to look like at the end on the contract. He just cares about the good solution on the good implementation. And that's something that a sales rep or an account executive cannot necessarily do because he's under a certain quota pressure, and we all know how sales cycle work in our industry with the quarters and everything. And so That's one thing that I've kind of seen happen from the SC gaining that credibility naturally by not having to worry about that quota. And then the other thing I wanted to add to that point is a segue with product management and engineering.
Yep.
So I run product at Algolia, and I have very technical product managers who can technically code. And it's not because they can that they should. And I think that's the answer also in a way to what Jeff was saying around, sure, he can sell. He could run this whole show on his own, but he shouldn't. And that's because, that way there's accountability and someone wants to push for more deal and someone wants to push back and push for the best implementation or something.
So have your SEs gone through sales training?
Oh, we all do.
Okay.
No.
No?
Ours don't either.
Interesting. So
However, I would say that we spend a lot of time with our sales team to kind of try to learn how they map deals or how they use Salesforce or things like that. So we try to
Right.
kind of be involved, but no. not
interesting.
a
And do
formal sales
your
training.
sales folks actually map out, like do you have a buying mechanism where you do a lot of back-end support to get people to expand, right? And in your sale, you're actually doing more of proof of concepts.
We
Yes?
actually don't have to do too
You
many
don't,
POCs.
okay.
It's fairly rare.
Okay.
It does depend on the product.
In the
I've done
sales
some
cycle
meetings.
itself, you've been trying to shorten based on getting people to use your product and get the SAs involved as quickly as possible.
Correct.
Okay.
So the more we can guide them,
Yep.
and the more they can hear what we've done. I mean, from our perspective, SparkPost sends 25% of the non-spam emails in the world.
Wow.
Every largest sender in the world uses us,
Okay.
minus Facebook. And so we have the stories to tell people what they need, how to do it. We guide them, and we will call them bullshit if they say, oh, we don't need to worry about that, or that doesn't matter, and it does. We will guide them and tell, and so that really helps, and that's what my whole discussion's about, is taking pure ownership and that consultant role. And so POCs become less and less when they're looking at you as that guidance.
Got it. So
I
you
think
become an
that's-
expert, basically. You can tell them about what other people have experienced, and you do some more of a referral sale or, an
Correct.
expert sale. Correct.
Doesn't mean they stop. I mean,
Right.
we recently had to do one where I had to send 10 million emails in 15
Yeah,
minutes.
got it.
You got to
Yeah.
prove it.
Yeah. To prove out that you could do that
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though others already do it,
Okay.
they had to see it.
So, I listened to all of your presentations. I thought they were really enlightening. Thanks, Emily. And one of the questions that I have for each of you about each other's presentation is, what didn't you agree with?
That's a tough one. Putting us on the spot.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I didn't disagree with anything.
You did not. So you guys are all
All
aligned.
very well
and say-
reasoned,
Huh?
very thoughtful.
Okay.
I think one of the things and it's actually something I agree with. I'm not coming for you. One thing I agree with Patrick in his presentation. He talked about tools. I think tools are extremely important. I'm a big believer in internal tools.
Yeah.
Huge fan of building them and huge fan of using them to
Yeah.
improve our work. The interesting thing about SEs at Algolia is that they're all engineers. None of them come from any sort of sales background. I've got 3 of them here tonight. Emily was a front-end software engineer. Julien was a full-stack software engineer. Sapper was founder of 2 startups before as a CTO and kind of technical co-founder. So none of them have ever sold before.
So
and
they
they're
hate
dropped in
people
this.
like me.
They
Yeah.
pretty much do.
Yeah, I know.
And yet they
I've been
love their
selling to you
job.
guys forever. Yeah. So
And they get dropped in there, and it automatically just works. They love it. There's something happening there. I mean, I don't know. You guys can probably speak to it better than I can, but from what I'm hearing, you guys are really loving it, and they're really fond of this interaction that they're having with people and being able to be the voice of reason and the experts and all that. And so the reason I'm saying this is every quarter we pick some big projects that we want to do internally and go back to coding, right? So every single solution engineers at
They're
Algolia
coding.
have a project for a quarter where they go back to just doing full stack engineering, and they build a project. Emily's building a giant demo interface for us. Someone else is building an internal demonstration board for implementations and things like that. So we actually go back to pure coding to kind of keep our
That's
skills
great.
sharp and also improve our day-to-day job.
yeah, that's really good. Do you do the same thing? Something similar?
Yeah. It just, yes.
You do.
I don't have anything to add. So.
Okay. No, the reason I ask is that, one of the challenges that you have is everybody wants to be on the cool projects, right? And so, people who code love to code, and a lot of the SEs come from a coding background. We have a lot of deep engineers on our team, and they're really super smart people. And I've got them out parading in front of customers trying to do like first calls, second calls, that kind of thing.
It's sometimes you end up having to make up projects. You just because they want to, you just make up something that you could have bought, but it's easier to build it yourself. It's funner. It's more fun. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's more. It just makes sense because you have 14 passionate engineers who are really good at their job, and sure, you can ask them to work on the sales cycle, but at some point they want to go back to creating something.
And you had something?
Yeah, just to add to that, and sort of the spirit of allowing the engineers to work on engineering projects versus only customer facing, we're having success with, as we move further and further up market, doing a lot of custom integrations and add-ons. And so what we're seeing is the early stages of a pipeline from what the architecture team is building sort of on a one-off basis, typically for a fee. These are reproducible assets that can then eventually make their way into the core product, but between sort of one-off service and actually in the API, there's sort of packaged up service offerings that we're building on top of the API. So Keen is vastly consumable and easy to use, but if you want to go to market quickly with, for example, high fidelity gaming analytics, we can do that for you based on the work that our team has done. So that's a big theme for us is finding leverage in those activities. So whether it's a POC or actual integration work, how do we make that repeatable and ultimately be a driver of revenue directly or indirectly?
So one question is, where do you, go ahead.
I was just going to say, or just place it up in GitHub so it's an open repository
Absolutely.
for customers to start to leverage. There again, helping that sales cycle because it's, they can grab it and run with it.
Yes.
So where do you find your SEs? Like, where do you mine them from, and what skills do they have when they come in the door?
I got to tell you, probably I think, and talking with my management, the hardest thing to find are good SEs.
Yeah.
I have a tagline, geek with a personality, because it's really difficult to find an engineer that has a personality that can talk not only to other engineers, but talk to an executive. The executive doesn't want to hear the same thing.
Yep.
And then it's really hard to find someone who's not technical, who can talk to the executives and go.
And get technical.
So you find them out of luck and digging through a lot of piles of resumes.
Yeah, especially in this area. Yeah, it's super hard. One of the things that's worked out for us really well is teaming. So we team the sales folks with very technical SAs, and the SAs teach the sales guys, and the sales guys teach the SAs, and they get to know each other, and they have sort of a pace, right, of working. You talked about pace, right? They understand like what the other person needs to do, and they attack the sales process that way, but they have a lot of respect and friendship. There's been some really funny friendships that have come out of this that you wouldn't expect, right? Mostly because they have respect for each other and what they do. So finding those people and then training them up, like what do you do to train people, or even with customer success folks that are technical, like how do you train those 4 levels of technical people?
Sure. Yeah. To answer your first question about identifying and finding the talent, we've had good luck with very brand-centric leadership around the developer community. So it's open source, it's events, it's coming to events like this, and trying to be in the community in a very meaningful way. And so we've had the solutions architects that I inherited and hired have been from our network.
Awesome.
So that's been a big part of our story, is really building a developer-centric brand.
So they raise their hand and want to join.
That's or referrals or friends of friends.
Got
it. They're just begging to come. Hopefully, maybe someday.
Yeah.
But for us, that's sort of an indirect way to answer that question. But that's been a key part of our strategy.
And then how do you train them when you get them and keep them?
My solutions architects are all former CTOs, and so, I know.
So you just have on the resume looking for a CTO.
I really have nothing to add to this conversation other than be very lucky.
Okay.
But so that's sort of been the theme. Training non-technical people, because for an API company, obviously you have to, if you're a solutions architect, if you're a CSM or a sales rep, it's a pretty technical. I've been at Keen almost a year, and the more I learn about our platform, the more I realize I don't know. And it's actually quite terrifying, the levels of complexity that you can actually delve into with the distributed system. So,
and Maxine, anything to add here in terms of like you have a technical team that works for you in the product group, right? Do they morph into SEs or do SEs morph into product?
Yes.
You're laughing.
Yes.
But yes.
So SEs, I think, so SEs are natural transition into product. I deeply believe. A matter of fact, I just poached an SE from the SE team to move him to the product team just 2 weeks ago. I myself moved from a solution engineering role when I started my career to product role, and I think it's actually an incredible segue into it.
Is that a
So
good
yes,
path? Do you
I
guys
think it
see
makes
that
a lot of
as
sense.
Jeff? Do you see that as a good path for people?
At times, it's, the path that each one, it just, SEs are a really weird breed of people. And so which path
That's
they
not
go.
going to make you popular.
We are. I listen to where you guys talk about where you find them or where you can groom them.
Yep.
And I look at SEs, and if you don't have it, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
You either have a personality where you can talk to people. You can't teach that, right? I mean, that's a real hard thing to teach, where you can stand up and be in front of people, or that you can relate to up and down.
So
And
the first two SEs that we had, the first one was great at the sales stuff and could talk to people, and the second one was so deep in the technology that he would say to someone, "No, you're wrong," and they would go, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Yes, I love that," right? So, this has been super helpful. Are there any questions out here in terms of, what you want to ask this team about? How do you hire a good SE? How do you train someone? What, where the line of demarcation is from sales?
So it's not perfect by any means. We've actually run into issues recently where by introducing a solution, as solution engineers would do, we've reduced our MR on a customer by half. So a pretty horrible solution as a software company, right? Because it was a better
Customers love you.
implementation, so that's great. And it's in line with our value, but at the same time, we gotta make our numbers, right? So things like that, we're working through it, and we're starting to realize that training is needed. We've actually talked about it as a team, and we've asked the sales team, we've formally asked them to train us on the way they do things. Things that we've started to do, however, is always back to thinking as a squad. So we're in this together. One of us doesn't go to the customer without the other, so we talk about things. We co-own the customer, and I think that's really been a core value of the way we approach sales. And so now we're trying to make a point, except in that specific example, of talking to each other before we do this. And I guess the golden rule, the one that's unbreakable, is that every time it ends up having an impact, whether positive or negative, on the dollar amount at the end of the month, that goes through the salesperson. Like, you don't make any of those decisions without involving sales. It's not fair. It's their quota. So we're learning through our mistakes as well. Definitely something we want to change. I don't think it's a good thing to say that we don't train our solution engineers to the sales flow and the sales process. As of now, it's been done organically, so they kind of get dropped in. We do a lot of mock calls. We have a whole kind of training process that takes about a month and a half, where we have a GitHub repository with 16 chapters, and we take them through both the product and the sales process. And we've also started involving sales in the mock calls as well, which has been tremendously helpful. And after that, we have a phase where we do a lot of kind of buddy on calls, so we back up each other a lot, where new SEs would join calls and just sit there and learn. And then finally, we start dropping them kind of in the water and just be like, okay, now this is your first call. But by no means is structured and formatted enough, and so it's some things that we're working through, especially as the team is growing. 14 people is starting to become a real issue that we don't have that formal training with sales.
You want to take that?
I'll
You're brave.
talk about one of ours that we had not that long ago. When it came to performing, nice enough person, but what we found was the whole company had to support that sales engineer on a continual basis. So we also are a very API-driven company, as I'm hearing from you guys, and no matter what we did to train him, to get him up and running, and what those APIs do, or how to leverage Postman for testing and things like that, he just couldn't get the concepts from a technical perspective. Now, from business side, he was one of those. He actually could talk. He could represent. He could initiate a conversation with a senior level versus a technical person, but unfortunately, he would start stumbling at that technical level. And so he didn't have that balance. And I said, that balance is the hardest thing. I don't think you can teach it. I think you can teach the product. I think you can teach someone when to stop talking on the sales side, like we were talking earlier. I will not talk about price. If someone asks about price, I say, nope, I'm done with and I may be talking for an hour. Then they ask price, I say, I'm done, so I think that's actually fairly easy thing to find out. Is when everyone has to support that person is really where I see it.
It's a big challenge, right? For us, it's the CS team at Keen, the sales. We have collective interest in the customer. So it's kind of a question: does this fall pre-sales or post-sales in my group? For us, my sales team might agree, but hitting a quarter because we sold somebody something they only kind of need is not optimal. Because every single deal that I've been a part of where we got an extra X and ARR because we could, they churn or downgrade every single time. And so now my team looks bad. Now there's weird conversations about whose fault it was. Let's have this conversation early on, and let's be honest about what we need to do. And so that's, for me, I'm going to lean on my solutions team to do that. They don't care. Like we're walking away from a deal right now because what the customer needs is not in alignment with what we can deliver. And fortunately, we don't have the pressure from our leadership to do those deals no matter what. You might find yourself in a situation where you're getting downward pressure.
So that actually builds trust.
It builds
right?
a lot of trust.
And you can say to someone, this is not a good fit for what we do. Have you been in that position?
Oh,
Yes, not at Algolia yet. I've only been there 3 months, but at
Yeah.
Zendesk it happened very often. And actually, the funny thing is, every time we walked away from a deal because it's not right for us, they came back and they said, "Actually, we want to work with you."
That's called
It's
strip
been
lining.
it feels great when that happens.
Yeah.
So we had a customer where this is a classic case. The sales team pushed the deal through. It got to our team. We didn't vet it beforehand. There's a number of reasons for this happening, all of which are now rectified. But it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit. So we allowed them to walk away out of the contract, no problem. And now, but now the great thing about that is their CEO said, listen, if you ever need a reference for a customer that didn't work out, let me be that reference, because you guys handle that with such maturity and grace that I would love to do. Like, when we need what you have, we're going to buy it, no question. So let us be a reference if you ever need a weird reference for for this situation. So to me, as a success person, like that's massive.
And you never know where that customer is going to land, right? And so they may just call you, right?
And we often have customers that we have to push away because we won't take certain types of customers.
I get that.
So we will do a lot of sales cycle, and then we'll start talking about, well, we have to put you through a compliance. And if they're not really sending the types of emails that we think legally can be sent out, or they're not following the laws, we have to walk away.
So that's a good question. And one of the things that I wonder is, how often do your SEs do qualification?
Every time.
All the time.
Yeah, they're more on so if you think about the sort of the Bant chart, they're not really doing that sort of stuff. But when it comes to technical fit or expertise, or can this client team deliver on what they need, they're very deeply involved in those questions and saying, look, the customer, they're not that technical. They have a lot of the senior team's driving it, but actually it's going to fall down when it gets across the line. Yeah. They're the ones that are bringing a lot of insight on sort of technical, functional, cultural fit.
What about Maxime? What about you? Were shaking your head.
They don't do qualification. They know the line. I think that's one thing they know really well. Actually, they'll know exactly when we've crossed it, or when we're about to cross it. And they'll say, we can't do this. This is not good. We don't use Algolia for this. This is not how we do this. But they don't do the actual kind of typical qualification in the sense of the word. They just help with it. They bring their piece to the, technical scoping is a large part of what SEs do. But it's really the responsibility of the salesperson at Algolia and their technical salesperson to help qualify the deal.
But that is qualification. It's just technical qualification.
Yeah.
Well, then
you're not looking at, do they have a budget?
Yeah.
And can we get a signature? But technically, they aren't a fit. You're
Yeah.
telling them. And
Yeah,
Right.
in that sense, then yes, they do.
Yeah, so for us, the technical qualification, we size the customer opportunity. And so the essays are really involved in like, okay, this is a small customer, this is a medium customer, this is a large customer, based on how much data they're processing and, whether or not they have, a public cloud, those kind of things. We can do some of that with the sales team, but, when we get into the deep, like integration or what kind of data are they moving and, how fast they have to move it and where they're putting that data, we have to have the essays involved. I have a lot of respect for what they do. They rarely get that wrong, right? And so that's a piece that the sales guys can't work without.
Part of that is the qualification process, and so it's sort of I realize this is a bit of a non-answer, but engaging technical resources like your SEs, essays on the front end to make sure that we can vet them out prior to doing a deal. The reality is if a deal gets pushed through and there's no resources on the other end to catch it, there's not much you can do about that in my experience. You can try to sell professional services if you offer that, but that's something you want to do on the front end versus after the fact. You can offer training, you can offer hand-holding, onboarding, but if my team's thinking about prioritization and there's 100 customers who are doing well and they're very healthy, and there's a couple customers who don't have the resources, there's only so many hours in the day, and so we're going to double down on where we can drive more experience, more usage and revenue.
And Maxime, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so we struggle with that quite a bit. We're more of a traditional enterprise B2B API sell, and so when we are stuck with a high-value customer, big MR number, typically a big sports apparel brand in the US as of a month ago, and getting bounced from, I don't know if you work for a sports apparel brand in the US, but the point is like I can't name the name, but it's a big one, and it was very annoying because they kept moving us from team to team and scrum team to scrum teams. Sorry if you work for them. But yeah, it was pretty annoying because we felt very powerless. And for an engineer, for a software engineer, for someone who joined the team as an SC who'd never done SC before, it can get incredibly frustrating because they don't understand. We literally had a project in Q1 called "Why Don't Customers Listen to Us? Let's do investigations to understand why." And experiments. We literally tried experiments as a team to see different ways of forwarding our emails to see if they would listen to one way better than the other. Like it's that bad in some cases. But I think, as you said, there's some cases you just can't do anything about it, and you just got to learn to. This is how it is. They are paying the bill at the end of the day. They decide how they implement. They might have internal things that make it complicated for them to be as efficient as agile as we do.
We've run into that as well. So I need to end this, but I just wanted to say I'm really honored to be on the stage with three very technical people. I have sold to you guys for a long time, and I consider most of my customers friends. So it's really nice to talk to you about some of the challenges and opportunities that you have selling technically. I have a lot of respect for what you do.
Thanks for
you.
running a great
Thank you.
panel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Marcy.